Thanks for tuning into Photographiliac Podcast. I'm your host, B. Smitty. I want to give a special shout out to everyone who's listened to part 1. If you haven't yet, it's in the archives. And the support has just been amazing with this new podcast change to Photographiliac. It gets me really hyped, and working on these new outlines, I'm super excited for what's to come. But let's get into part 2 of Humans on the Moon. I want to give a special Instagram shout out to Ashley, Elaine, Vivid Clee, Bella, Sarah, Kyle, Candace, Sean, and Madeline. Appreciate the support. So I guess part 1, I should explain that, was kind of like the process of getting there and landing. And 600 million people watched on TV as that happened. And so from there, Aldrin joined Armstrong on the moon's surface 19 minutes after Armstrong stepped on it and said that famous quote. And together they took photographs of the terrain. The photographic equipment and materials carried by Apollo 11 were designed specifically to photograph, quote, targets of opportunity. Things like scientifically interesting sites and potential Apollo landing sites as time and circumstances permitted. Also, obtain photographs of the lunar module and lunar surface activities after landing. Obtain vertical oblique stereo strips of near side and far side regions of scientific interest. Record mission operational activities, as well as obtain documentation for subsequent landing crew training purposes. Apollo 11 carried a number of cameras for collecting data and recording various aspects of the mission, including one 70mm Hasselblad electric camera, two 70mm lunar surface super wide angle cameras, one Hasselblad EL data camera, could be L data, two 16mm Mauer data acquisition cameras, one 35mm surface close-up stereoscopic camera, and a television camera. During the mission, 9 magazines of 70mm film and 13 magazines of 16mm film were exposed. The 16mm film taken during the lunar module descent provided the first accurate knowledge of the exact landing point of the lunar surface. The 70mm photographs taken on lunar surface provided panoramic views of the surface near the landed lunar module and allowed detailed topographic mapping of the lunar surface near the landing point. Lunar photography from lunar module consisted mainly of specific targets of opportunity, with a short strip of vertical still photography from about 170 degrees to 120 degrees longitude. Most of the other 70mm command module photography of the surface consisted of features selected by the crew. The descent film was used to determine the location of the landed lunar module. One sequence of 16mm coverage taken from the lunar module window shows the lunar surface change from light to a very dark color wherever the crew walked. The quantity and quality of still photographs taken through the lunar module window and on the lunar surface were very good. The still photography on the surface indicates that the landing site location, determined by use of the 16mm descent film, was correct. The close-up stereo photography provides amazing imagery of 17 areas, each 3 by 3 inches. These areas include various rocks, some ground surface cracks, and some rock that appears to have been partially melted or splattered with molten glass. These are the cameras and detailed information of them. 70mm Hasselblad L data camera. This electrically powered camera carried on the lunar module featured semi-automatic operation. It used 60mm Biogon lens exclusively. The operating sequence was initiated by squeezing a trigger mounted on the camera handle. A grid was set in front of the image plane to provide photogrammetric information in the analysis of the photography. The camera was bracket mounted on the front of the astronaut's suit. A 16mm Mauer data acquisition camera. Apollo 11 carried two Mauer data acquisition cameras, one on the command module and one on the lunar module. The cameras were used primarily to record engineering data and for continuous sequence terrain photography. The command module camera had lenses of 5mm, 10mm, and 75mm focal lengths. The lunar module camera was fitted with 18mm wide-angle lens. Accessories included a right-angle mirror, a power cable, and the command module bore sight window bracket. The Mauer camera weighed 2.8 pounds with a 130-foot film magazine attached. It had frame rates of 1, 6, and 12 frames per second automatic and 24 frames per second semi-automatic. At all lens focal lengths and shutter speeds of 1/60th, 1/25th, 1/500th, and 1,000th of a second. Again, at all lens focal lengths. 5mm lunar surface close-up stereoscopic camera. This camera, carried on the lunar module's modular equipment storage assembly, was designed for the highest possible resolution of a 3-inch square area with a flash illumination and fixed distance. Photography was accomplished by holding the camera on a walking stick against the object to be photographed. The camera was powered by 4 nickel-cadmium batteries that operated the motor drive mechanism and electronic flash strobe light. Immediately after landing on the moon, astronauts Armstrong and Aldrin prepared the lunar module for liftoff as a contingency measure. Photographs were taken through the window during this activity and again later on the surface. The photographs reproduced in this series about surface photography show detail in specific areas like surface activities, sample documentation, and stereoscopic surface photography. The astronauts carried out a planned sequence of activities that included deployment of various science experiments, collection of larger sample of lunar surface material, and 2 core tube samples. Most of those activities were documented by 70mm still cameras. One of the main photographic tasks to be accomplished during the activities was documenting the retrieval, photographing the lunar surface, and the moonscape. Stereoscopic close-up surface. The Apollo 11 mission carried a close-up stereo camera with which the astronauts took 17 pictures, each of an area 3 by 3 inches and a high resolution. There are many details seen in these pictures that were not known visually or that could have been seen with similar definition by the astronauts Armstrong and Aldrin. In their careful inspection of the lunar surface, the photographs taken on the mission with close-up stereoscopic camera are of outstanding quality and show in detail the nature of the lunar surface material. Several photographs contain unusual features. From the photographs, information can be derived about the small-scale lunar surface geologic features and about the processes occurring on the surface. Along with taking photographs and planting the U.S. flag, they also talked with the President Nixon, via Houston. Again, it was 10:56 when Armstrong said that famous quote, and by 1:11 a.m. on July 21st, both astronauts were back in the lunar module and the hatch was closed. The 2 men slept that night on the surface of the moon, and at 1:54 p.m., the Eagle began its ascent back to the command module. Among the items left on the surface of the moon was a plaque that read, "Here men from the planet Earth first set foot on the moon, July 1969 AD. We came in peace for all mankind." At 5:35 p.m., Armstrong and Aldrin successfully docked and rejoined Collins, and at 12:56 a.m. on July 22nd, Apollo 11 began its journey back to Earth, safely splashing down in the Pacific Ocean at 12:50 p.m. on July 24th. The Apollo 11 program's total cost was about $25.4 billion. about $152 billion in today's money. That money flowed to giants like Boeing and Velcro, among other companies. Later in life, Buzz Aldrin said, quote, "Whenever I gaze up at the moon, I feel like I'm on a time machine. I'm back to that precious pinpoint of time, standing on the foreboding, yet beautiful, sea of tranquility. I could see our shining blue planet Earth poised in the darkness of space." And that concludes the 2-part series of Humans on the Moon. It's so interesting to look back on this and think like, being on the moon and taking 17 photographs, and it makes you wish like how it just been so nice to have like something more simple, like, to have a digital camera at that time and just fire off a ton of photos, like thousands of photos within that time, and just have so much like extra small, even just like the simple information that we don't have, that's probably there, that we don't even know of, just having so many more images and just so many different angles of, space around, and, obviously the moon itself, and, just kind of a whole, yeah, man, you could get a lot of stuff. Photography is such an interesting thing. It's even, it was kind of said in this where you see things like when you take a photo, the way you register things in real life when you're looking around is completely different than if you take a photograph of that one thing and then analyze it later. Because in real life, you're thinking while when you're looking around, you're actually thinking and you're processing things a certain way. But when you're looking at a photograph, you're processing that scene in that photo. So it's a completely different way of viewing. So that's why, if we had, say, 1,000 photos on the moon, who knows what we would learn for sure. But anyways, I want to thank you for the support of this podcast. If you want to hit up some merch on this here show, if you go to photographyshop.com, we got shirts, hoodies, got tank top, a lot of good stuff going on over there. If you want to support the show, it's photographyliac.com. That takes you over to the Patreon page. And I'm actually working on the first Patreon exclusive upload for an episode. I'm actually debating on 2 right now, which one is going to be on Patreon. So I'm not going to say which one yet because I haven't decided. So, but I'm outlining 2 at the same time. One will be on Patreon, one will be on the normal podcast show. And again, that's photographyliac.com. And on social media, hit me up on Instagram. I want to give a shout out to start off to Ashley, and I want to give out a shout out to Pat. Thanks for the support. And Instagram is at photographyliacpod, and Twitter is at photographypod. Appreciate the shares. Definitely appreciate that, and the responses has been awesome, and I appreciate it very much. I'm always kind of I'll be posting teasers of the next episode. So if you follow Instagram, you'll know ahead of time what the next episode will be once I post that. So it's a good place to kind of see what's coming up. Again, that's at photographyliacpod on Instagram. Thanks for the support, and I'll talk to you very soon.